Hello, my name is Rickard, and in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use the Generative Fill tool in Photoshop. Adobe just released the Generative Fill tool in the Photoshop beta. So this is still a feature that is in beta, meaning it's being tested. There are some issues and bugs with it that are going to be ironed out before the official release. However, this is such an exciting new tool that I thought it would be worth our time to take a look at how to use it. What are some of the things that you can do with it, get you thinking with the tool so that when it comes out, you're ready to put it into use. Now, if you want to follow along, I have included all the images that I use in a link in the description of this video. Let's dive onto the computer where I'll show you first how you can get the Photoshop beta and then how to use the Generative Fill tool. All right, before we go to Photoshop, we're going to go to the Creative Cloud app. And if you go to the apps up here and then go down to beta apps, this is where you're going to find the Photoshop beta with the Generative Fill. If you don't have it installed, you'll see it down here amongst the desktop apps. Simply click on the install button, and then once it's installed, let's go ahead and open it. Okay, so here it is. Let's go ahead and open a file. I'm going to go to File, Open, and in the Assets folder, I'm going to open this sample image. And right away, if you haven't started working with Photoshop 2023, you're going to notice this new Contextual Task Bar. And what this is it basically it's similar to the tool options up here, except for it gives you instant access to the things that you're most likely going to want to do next based on the action you've done. So in this case, if you make a selection like this, you have the option for Generative Fill. That's not going to be in the current release of Photoshop. You're only going to find that in the beta, but with the Photoshop 2023, you will see the taskbar. Here you can make adjustments to your selection. Here you can invert your selection. Here you can transform your selection. And you'll notice that once I commit to the transform, I now have other options here. I'm going to go ahead and escape out of that. You can also add a mask, create an adjustment layer, or fill in your selection with a color, a pattern, or what have you. And then finally, here you can deselect. Now, for me, having this taskbar appear every time I make a selection is going to be way too distracting. So what I'm going to do here is just take this little white bar on the left, drag it to where I want the taskbar to kind of live in my workspace, which is going to be down here toward the bottom, and then click on these three dots and click on the pin bar position. So now when I make a selection, the bar will appear down here. It will not appear under my selection. And for me, that's the preferred behavior. I also want a shortcut so that I can turn this on or off. If I'm working on color grade or something, it may just start getting in the way. So to do that, I'm going to go up to Edit, Keyboard Shortcuts, go down to Window, and then scroll all the way to the bottom, and you're going to see this Contextual Taskbar. For myself, I assigned Command, Option, and R for this toolbar. It's currently assigned to, I believe, Select and Mask, but the Select and Mask workspace shortcut is Command-Shift-R, so it's pretty easy to access that without needing this shortcut. I kind of also like this shortcut because it's very similar to my ruler shortcut, Command-R. So just by holding the option, I can now turn this on or off. So that's just a suggestion from me. You're going to want to be able to control where that taskbar is. Okay, having said all that, let's dive into the new Generative Fill tool. It's going to be here on the taskbar and also up here under File, under Edit, Generative Fill. So those are the two places where you can access it. Without a selection in your file, you are not going to have it. So here I just deselected, and you can see that the generate or the generative fill is no longer here, and up here it's grayed out. So the first step for using generative fill is making a selection. Another thing to note is that the generative fill works on your image as a whole. It does not work at the layer level. It works at the image level. So if I have a blank layer here and make a selection, the generative fill is actually going to still operate as it would if I had my layer selected. So that's just something to think with when you're using this tool. It operates at the image level. It does not operate at the layer level. All right, so first, let's look at how we can use this tool to fill in a part of our image using the contextual information. So think of it as a very smart content-aware fill tool. So in this case, I want to get rid of this balloon that's in her hand, and we're going to add a balloon up here that she's holding. So in order to do that, I first need to make a selection of this. I'm going to go ahead and select my pen tool and just make a nice selection that follows her hand here. Okay, so now we can right mouse click, make a selection. And now with our generative fill, I'm going to click on that. And here you can see it says, describe what you'd like to generate or feel free to leave this blank. I found that leaving it blank almost always gives you better results than trying to put something in there. Now, we will get into the text to image, but just realize this tool is extremely powerful when you just leave it blank. So here, let's go generate. And what this is doing is it's taking a snapshot of your whole image, sending it to the AI cloud, generating options, and then giving them to you. Okay, so here you can see we now have a new layer, and it's called a generative layer. And you'll notice that it has a new icon, a little layer with 2 stars next to it. That indicates that that layer is a generative AI layer. And here under my properties, you can see I have a few options. Because she's going to be holding a string here, I don't want this long string, so I'm going to use probably this one here. I think that looks good. Okay, so having done that, the next thing I want to do is I want to get rid of the black ink on these balloons. So I'm just going to go in here and make a relatively rough selection of just the black parts here. And then we're going to go generative fill and hit generate. Okay, so this is a problem with the beta. It will misidentify certain images as violating their guidelines even when they don't. This does not violate any of the guidelines, but somehow it's perceiving this as being a violation. Now, I have gotten it to work on this exact same image by just making some changes to my selections and trying it again, somewhat trying to force past its own bug here. Okay, so even though it gave me the violation error, it actually did do one variation. And you can see that variation did a great job of just removing those black ink marks on our balloon. The next thing I want to do is add a balloon. So this is where we get into the text to image, where we're actually going to put in a prompt. So first, I'm going to make a selection of where I want the balloon to be, and I also want the balloon to have a string. So I'm just making a kind of a very loose balloon shape here. So just like that. And then here under generative fill, rather than leaving this blank, I'm going to say yellow balloon with string and then click on generate. Okay, so let's look at our three options. We can toggle through them here. We can also toggle through them here. And if you want to help improve the AI, you can also tell it which ones you like and which ones you don't. So in this case, I would say this one looks kind of terrible, so I'm going to give this one a downvote. And this one looks quite good. I'm going to give that one an upvote. And this one I don't like. I'm going to leave this one unvoted. And then let's go ahead and generate again. Now, each time you generate, it's going to give you 3 more options, and each one will be a variation. And I really like this one. It's nice, clean, and simple. So let's leave it at this one. Next thing I want to do is just add a few more balloons to the scene itself. So to do that, I'm going to grab my elliptical marquee, go ahead and make a circle here. And then here, I'm going to turn it so that it's on add to my selection, and then just add a few more, maybe here. Here, here, and maybe here. And then here, I'm going to type in yellow balloons and hit generate. And if you hit the return key on your keyboard, that's the equivalent of hitting that generate button after you've typed the prompt. Okay, let's look at our options. I think number 2 actually looks really good. I like that it's added those little dots there, just makes those balloons look more real. And there you go. You can see just using the generative AI, we went from this image to this image. And it did a really good job. And I found that with the generative AI tool, the more you can generate things that are already within the context of the image, the better results you're going to get. So in this case, there are already yellow balloons in the scene. So adding more is going to be just give you a much better outcome than, for example, if I tried to add some birds. So let's take this same generative AI. Here we can actually change the prompt by selecting the layer. In the properties for that layer, we have the prompt. So here I'm going to say flying birds and then hit generate. Now, let's see how this looks. I think we're going to get not as nice results because there's no context of birds within this image. And as you can see, our flying birds are kind of a mess. It didn't really understand what to do with that command, flying birds, right? So we could try to revise it here, maybe try flying doves surrounding subject. Let's try that and hit generate. And we didn't get a single dove. Let's try flying sparrow birds. And again, no birds. So you can kind of see the issue that the AI has. It does a really good job the more context it has. I'm going to go ahead and try one more thing to see if we can get some birds in here. And that's when I first make my shapes, I'm going to try to make them a little bit more into bird shapes. And let's see if that gets us any better of a result. Birds flying in the sky around subject. And you can see that it just does not know what to do with this. So let's go ahead and turn that off. I'm going to go back onto my original balloons layer here, go to the option I liked, which was the second one here. And I'm going to leave the image as this. Let's go ahead and close this one. All right, so now you know how to install the tool, the basics of how to use it. Obviously, this tool is in beta, so there are some bugs, there are some issues, and when the final release comes out, we'll definitely do some more tutorials on it and actually use it in workflows. However, I do want to show you a few other tips and tricks that I learned as I was using the tool, and also some pitfalls to look out for. So let's dive back into Photoshop. All right, for our next image, let's go back to the assets folder. And here I want to show you the remove option. So here's another image. And in this one, I want to remove her and I want to center her in the image. So I'm going to show you a few things that you can do with this new tool that make this kind of task so much easier and faster. So first, to get rid of her, let's go ahead and just make a selection that just encompasses her. I want to leave as much as of my original image intact, so I want the selection to be pretty darn tight around her. Okay, so we'll do it there, and then here I'm just going to generate, again, if you don't put in a prompt, Photoshop's AI will determine what it should put there, and 99% of the time it does a really good job of just filling in that blank spot with information from the image. So here you can see that did a really good job of getting rid of her and rebuilding this background realistically. Would have taken a really long time to do this without the generative AI tool. All right, next, I want to center her up. So let's go to our crop tool. I'm going to go C for the crop tool. Just start bringing this out until she's about in the center of the image, and then we'll hit the check mark here. Okay, next, I'm just going to select this entire area here. Let's make sure this. All right, there. And then we'll hit Generative Fill. I'm going to leave it blank again and hit Generate. And let's look at our three options. I think option 2 looks best, so let's leave it at that. And you can see how trying to do this same task without this generative fill would have taken so much longer. So that is really the power of this generative fill. In my opinion, it works best when you're using context information from the image. All right, let's go ahead and close this. And let's go back to our assets folder. And the next one I want to show you is this blend 1 and blend 2. So let's select both of these and go ahead and hit open. I'm going to show you another cool thing that you can do with this generative tool, and that is to blend images. Now, this is something I just kind of discovered, but I want to play with it more. But I'm going to show you because I think it's pretty darn cool. We're going to take this image and I want to put this door on the side of this building. So what I'm going to do is I will take this door, I'll just select it out here like this. I'll do Command C, close this one, and then in this document here, I'm going to do Command V, and then I'll do Command T for transform, and make this about the size that I want it. Something like this, and then maybe we'll just adjust the warp on this just a tiny bit to match our building better. So something like that. And then here, what I'm going to do is right now, this does not look blended at all. You can tell I just kind of cut it out and put it on top. So what if I select this bottom area and just hit Generative Fill? And you can see there that Photoshop did a really good job of making this door looks like it belongs in this scene. Again, I didn't fill it, like even look at this. Look how great that looks. got these plants coming in front of it now. Just it went from a cutout to a really nicely integrated element in this Photoshop, or sorry, in this Photoshop document. And I think the future of this tool really is going to come to life when we can do blending with it like this. So that's one trick I wanted to show you. Let's go ahead and close this and let's go back to our assets. And for the next one, I want to show you this close replacement. And this one, I think, has a lot of potential in the future, although right now it's not quite production ready. One thing you'll find with the AI tool is that it does a good job for a thumbnail, but when you zoom in, it's not quite production ready for the stuff that it generates. It does a great job at filling in stuff, but at generating new objects, it still is not great. So here, I just want to replace this with a denim jacket. And let's look at our options. They all seem a little small, to be honest. Let's try generating one more time. And that one's a little bit better. So here's a good example. Just on the surface, right, when you look at it, it looks pretty good. But then when you start zooming in, you can see that this just will not work for production. Now, I think as the product gets used more and more, it'll get better and better. But right now, I would say it's not really production ready for generating clothes like this. We can also add a hat on him. So let's try that. Just make a space like this, and then maybe we can put in brown felt fedora. And that did a much better job than the jacket. Something like this is actually usable. That actually looks, I'd probably move the hat down a bit, but we could always do that with other tools in Photoshop. So that's another use for this tool, is changing clothes. I think that in the future, as the tool improves, this is going to become a more useful feature. Right now, you could probably use it for like social media or low resolution posts, but for a production project, it's probably not quite there yet. All right, let's go ahead and close this. And let's go back to our assets folder. I want to show you just more generation and how we can use that, and a couple of tricks that you can do. So first, let's go ahead and just select this area here where our rocks are coming out. And here we'll put ancient stone monolith. And I kind of like that one or that one, but you know what? Let's do one more generate. Okay, I like this one. All right, next, I'm going to select a little spot here on the ground, and I'm going to say man kneeling and praying to the monolith. And let's hit generate. Okay. All right, so let's use this guy. Now, another thing that you can do with these, so here you can see this is obviously designed and generated for this spot of the image. But if I hold down Option and make a copy of this, and I want to put him here, what I can do is you can see it made a new generative layer here. If I just hit generate again, this does not act like a smart object, meaning it will not update the one on the left. It's only going to update my new layer that's on the right. And hopefully, because I said it's praying to the monolith, it should turn our character around to the other side. And you can see it did. And then let's do one more. We'll put this guy here. And for this, I kind of want him a little bit bigger. So I'm going to do Command T for transform and just make him a little bit bigger and then hit generate again. Now for the center one, I did find that it had some trouble understanding that I want the subject pointing at the monolith. And I usually have to change this, to change the prompt on this one. Let's see how it does. Yeah. So there you can see it's facing us. So we're going to have to change our prompt a little bit. We're going to say man kneeling and praying to the monolith with back to camera. Let's hit generate again. But you will notice that because I transformed him a bit bigger, this character is bigger than the other two. So that's one thing to take into account when you do a transform on a AI image. The next time you generate, it will take that scaling into account. And there you go. Okay, so there you can see just with AI, we've gone from this to this. Now this as a thumbnail looks great. The problem is once you zoom in, it does not look so great, and that would not be usable for any kind of production. So this is something that will probably be much more useful in the future. But for now, it's probably good for ideation and stuff like that. Okay, let's go ahead and close this. The other thing I want to show you here is this lighthouse image. So I have found that with certain things like lighthouses, it does a really good job. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and just make a selection right here and then type in lighthouse and then hit generate. And you can see it's actually even matching the lighting of the mountains here, which is something that I've seen even like human Photoshop artists miss. So that's really quite good there. I like this one. Okay, so now here's one thing that you do have to pay attention to, and that is the placement of your layers. So here, I want to replace this sky with a more interesting sky. So I'm going to go ahead and with my quick selection tool, I'll just select the sky area here and then maybe do a intersect so that I'm just selecting the sky there. Okay, so now if I go generate and say cloudy sky, okay, let's try that again. Cloudy sky, sky with a lot of clouds. Let's try that. And this is beta, so you will run into bugs and errors. Kind of just force yourself through them. Just retry it, make your selection again, just try different stuff. Okay, so here you can see, so like this one, let's say I like this guy, you'll notice because this layer is underneath this one, the box around here just doesn't work for us. Now, I could try to mask this out, but the other thing you can do is because every time it generates, it takes a snapshot of your whole image, all I have to do is regenerate the lighthouse and it'll take the new clouds into account when making the new generated layer. One thing to understand about the generative fill in terms of the way it works is its primary command is to make it seamless. So you can use that to your advantage. And I think that looks quite nice. One other thing you can do here, which I think is pretty cool, is you can actually select an area like this and add a larger sea cave. So we can go large sea cave with arch. And again, because this is using contextual information from the image, it's going to do a much better job than if I asked it to add something out of context or incongruous to this scene. Okay, so let's go ahead. You can see here the before and after. Pretty impressive for everything being completely generated by AI. Let's go ahead and close this one. Okay, one final thing I wanted to show you is I have composite courses on my website, nucly.com, and one of them is a Snow White composite course. So this is a 1 hour course where you put together this composite that you see here of Snow White. Now this is done using all the normal tools in Photoshop. We're taking separate photos, blending them together, creating snow with procedural noise and so forth. What I wanted to do was see how good would the generative AI be at doing composites in this kind of style. So I did the same composite using only generative AI, and you can see the results of that here. And you can see the difference in quality. The generative AI is definitely not as good as a competent artist in Photoshop. However, I think in a year or two, you're going to see a lot of improvements, probably even sooner than that, where Photoshop will get good enough that you can do full composites just with one starter image. So those are some tips, tricks, and also some pitfalls for using the generative AI tool in Photoshop. I will mention again that this tool is in beta, and when the actual tool comes out, we'll have far more tutorials and even courses at nucly.com that you can take on how to use the tool in your own workflows. Now, if you enjoyed this tutorial, please subscribe to my channel, leave a like, turn on notifications, and here are some other tutorials that you can check out. I'll see you next time.